So we're joined by WLBT, three on your side, sports reporter Kasie Thomas. We thank you so much for joining us today. I got a room full here with me at Velma Jackson High School. We're recording this for all of our friends in Madison County schools, Rosa Scott, Madison Central, Ridgeland High School, Germantown High School, the Academic Options Center, and our YouTube channel. And we are in the arts and audiovisual career cluster. So we thank you so much for taking some time for us today.
Yeah, of course. I'm so excited. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Now, before we get into what it is you do at WLBT, just a little background. You're from Wetumpka, Alabama, which is near Montgomery, Alabama. You went and
Yes.
played high school, or you played college volleyball at North Greenville University, there right outside Greenville, South Carolina, and you were actually a participant in the Miss South Carolina pageant while you were there, getting your degree in
Yes.
broadcast journalism. So, tell us about your college experience and how that led you to get into sports and into sports broadcasting.
Yeah, of course. So I think it was I was surrounded by sports my entire life. Both my parents actually played sports at Auburn. My dad was a football player, my mom was a gymnast. So we were constantly just involved in sports just growing up. And then when I got into college, I kind of just knew it was something that I wanted to do. Once again, I played volleyball, so I was surrounded by sports again. And getting into broadcasting was something actually different for me. I was very shy, kind of a nervous person in front of people. So I think that's funny now to be a broadcast journalist and in front of people a lot of times now. But I was super nervous, but then I started doing it, and I loved it and I fell in love with it. And I was so blessed to be able to get a job right out of college, and end up here in Jackson, Mississippi, and being a sports reporter now.
That's awesome, and and it really is a great station to start your career at. Now, something we were looking at some of your reels before you came online, and something that I was pointing out is that most sports reporters, it's not just, in fact, pretty much every local sports reporter, it's not just getting up in front of the camera and doing the broadcast live. That is a big part of it, but you have to get
Yes.
your you have to edit. You know how to work. Every time I see you, you've got a camera with you. So you're filming your own stuff. And if you're using something from a national broadcast, you have to edit that and get it in your broadcast. Then you have to write a script. And then you got to go live on television and fit it in a time frame. So talk about how all that works from start to end, because it is a lot more than just what we see at the 10 o'clock broadcast.
Yes, that is very true. I think it's funny. Sometimes I have a younger brother and he'll kind of be like, Kasie, you've been there for hours. Like, what are you doing? Like your sports segment is only like 2, 3 minutes. And I'm like, Avery, I have to do a lot. But, like you said, like I'm going out, I'm shooting games, different stories and things like that. When I'm shooting those games and stories, I come back to the station and it's a matter of like, I'm very big on storytelling. So what's the story that I want to plan? So that comes in the writing and the editing and laying out like this is the beginning, the middle, the end, how everything kind of flows. But it's definitely a process of the shooting, the editing, and then also the writing. And then on top of that, I think of when I'm writing to be very casual. I like it to be fun and light and kind of witty. So a lot of that kind of just plays into the entire process, but it takes a lot longer than I think people really expect. But I love every second of it. So, and just being able to put a good product out there, I think is really important.
Absolutely. And you mentioned a good product out there. I'm glad you did mention that, because the news, especially the local news, you have to know what your viewing audience is going to want to see. Just because you're a fan of a certain team doesn't mean everybody wants to see that. Just because you're not a fan of a certain sport does not mean your viewers don't want to see that. So, the great Rob J, who has actually been a guest of ours before, he told us he went to the extreme of he went and bought a book about golf and learned about golf so he could talk about it on the air. And then, he said, I didn't know anything about NASCAR, but I had to learn because our viewers wanted to see NASCAR coverage. So talk about, gearing to your viewing public, because obviously you are a sports fan and you follow a lot, but there's a lot of teams that people in Mississippi follow that you may not be as familiar with.
Yes, that is a very true statement. Like you said before, I was born and raised in Alabama, so I am actually an Auburn girl. I bleed orange and blue. So coming here and definitely learning Ole Miss, learning Mississippi State, learning your Jackson State, learning your Belhavens and Millsaps, and really getting an understanding of the teams. And growing up, like I was your football, basketball, baseball here and there type of girl. So of course, I cover everything. So I'm covering when I'm here, like I'm covering soccer. I'm covering. We just did a story on like lacrosse a little while ago. So we're
Oh,
doing a
cool.
bunch of different. Yeah, we're doing a bunch of different sports, and so really diving in and learning the sports and really getting an understanding is a very big part of it. We actually cover Sanderson Farms, the big PGA golf tournament, and my dad's a golfer. I'm telling you, I was like calling him every day, Dad, please explain this. Make sure this makes sense. Like it's definitely very important to know what we're talking about and really be driven in and really understanding what we're talking about, just because people are passionate about it who are watching. So we want to, reciprocate that passion and make sure like, we are giving the people, what they want. So I think that's actually very important to be able to dive in. And then also when I'm going out there and if I don't know as much about a sport, really talking to the players and the coaches and getting an understanding. I think that's probably also one of my favorite things. I remember covering soccer because we cover Bria soccer team out here. I think
Yeah.
they are based out of Clinton, but I didn't know too much about soccer. But going out there, talking to the players, watching them, having them explain it to me, playing around with them a little bit. So I thought that was really cool, and I think that's really another important part of the job.
Yeah, and we also watched your story about disc hoops, which was a non-traditional new sport that is especially in the summer, there's not as many pro and college sports going on. You've got to come up with a segment. So getting to highlight different types of sports in the community where people can go out and play, that's part of sports coverage as well.
It definitely is. I remember doing the disc hoops, and that was very fun, very entertaining. But, we have a lot of different things just in our community that people don't know about. And sometimes as a reporter, you have to kind of step back and say it's not so much about, the big sports, the crazy things, but, getting into the community and learning about the people and the players inside of the community and, kind of shining that little spotlight on them. So I thought stuff like that is really cool.
That's awesome. Now, we all see you on the air, but there's a lot of people behind the scenes that are also working in television. We see Howard, we see Maggie, we see and we see Dave Roberts. So and then we see you or whoever's doing the sports that night. So we see four people that are in the studio. We might see Chris Fields or somebody in the
Hmm.
field, but there's people behind the scenes. So we have kids that say, look, I think television is really interesting. I think I would enjoy it, but I'm not much of an on-camera person. What are some of the behind-the-scenes type jobs that are integral to a successful newscast?
Yes, of course. When I tell you those guys definitely a part of the backbone, they get that show off the ground. But we have producers, we have photogs, so photographers that go out and shoot different things. We've got assignment editors, news editor, things, just different things like that. But I'll say like producers, people laying out the show, laying out what you're going to see, what our anchors sometimes are going to say. That's a very important role. And we also have TMP, so like our people that do our cameras and make sure that we look good and make sure our lights are good and make sure our backgrounds are nice. And of course, I know I've had a few interns with me who are like, I love being out there on the field, but I don't want to be in front of the camera. And, being a photographer, those people are out there on the scene. Some of us, or I guess in my case, they're out there shooting games and doing things like that, or, running to like a breaking news scene. So there are definitely so many different roles for people who don't want to be in front of the camera. And that is completely okay. There's so many opportunities. So I'm like, jump at them, definitely do that.
Yeah, and then especially on the news side of it, you have people that are there all the time for any breaking news stories to be released on the website because the way news is designed now, people want it instantly. So if you're not going to be, if something happens overnight and you guys aren't going to go live until 4:30 the next morning, somebody's going to have something ready for that 4:30 newscast because people are going to wake up and say, "Hey, what happened?" So there's always somebody at work in the news industry.
Yes, that is very true. We're constantly moving. I think it's funny sometimes if you put like WLBT, WDVD into your GPS, it'll say closed. And I'm like, we're never closed. We're always going. We're always open.
Now, now, obviously, being in sports, you get to meet all kind of people. So, who are some of the more interesting athletes that you've got a chance to meet?
Oh, that's a great question. I think I was very lucky to be here, very lucky and blessed to be here during, I will say, the Deion Sanders era. So I've met Deion a few times, but they also did an XFL um, camp down here while he
Yeah.
was here. And I was able to meet Dwayne, The Rock Johnson,
Oh
which
man, that's awesome.
I thought that was insane. That's definitely top tier, definitely top tier. So I thought that was really cool. But also just sometimes meeting college athletes and college coaches that you've always just kind of seen just on TV, and you actually get to talk to them and communicate with them and see them in person. That's very cool. That's a very cool part of my day as well.
Yeah, and obviously as fans you appreciate that, but at the same time that level of professionalism, you can't fangirl out when you get to meet somebody that you really like, especially when you're going to put a product out there for the public to see. But another cool thing that you do, I mean, you get to you went to Atlanta to cover Ole Miss. You've been to,
Yeah.
anytime a Mississippi team is playing somewhere in a big game, you guys are there, and you got a great vantage point.
Yeah, the travel is definitely a real thing. Where the team goes, we go. We're trying to make sure that we give, our viewers that kind of coverage. Um, we did go out to the Egg Bowl, very exciting. Just the constant day coverage and really diving in. I'm giving kind of sometimes the viewers the behind the scene of what's going on instead of just the game. All that's very important, and I love doing that aspect of it. And of course, like talking to the coaches, seeing where their mindset's at before and after games. So it is very the travel with the team. I love that. I think it's very fun to be on the road and on the go sometimes.
Yeah, well, hopefully we can get another Mississippi team in the College World Series, and you guys will get to go to Omaha,
Uh,
because I always think it's cool to get to hear the interviews from the fans that have made the trip, because I think that really gives an insight into your community, and and if the team sees this, like these people came a long way just to see us play, so it really does give that positive vibe to the people that couldn't go to see what all's going on there. I always love those segments.
I'm telling you, I love it. I'm fingers crossed, toes crossed, everything. I would love to go so badly. But yes, having just kind of the fan reaction is so cool. Just to see how far people traveled is insane for different games. Like I remember one time I was talking to parents from a game who like made this super long trip, and it's just incredible to see the support. And when I feel like when players see that, it makes them maybe play a little bit harder. But it's definitely so cool to see the fans, the community that really travel and support these different teams. It's incredible.
Absolutely. Now, before I get to the students' questions, I did want to talk about one last thing, and that is the need for diversity in this field. Obviously, there are not a lot of women sportscasters, even on the national level. I mean, obviously, there's Linda Cohn, Robin Roberts, and her, a great Mississippian there. Pam Oliver's is one of my favorites. So, but you really don't have a lot of female sportscasters. And it's not that they're not
Mhm.
qualified, it's just something that you just haven't seen. So, what type of obstacles have you faced being a female in a male dominated industry? And why should young ladies consider getting into this?
I will say that being a female in the sports world it's definitely different. I have faced the trials of just as a female, sometimes being questioned if I really know things, and kind of checking my background and things like that, making sure I'm qualified for this and that. Um, so I will say, just jumping through the hoops of really proving myself and having to put myself out there maybe a little bit more. But I 100% encourage females to get out there and be sports reporters. We can do it. I wish there was like uh we can do it. Like, please be a sports reporter. I'm here for it. I love it. Just seeing that field grow so much, just it makes me happy. Definitely not where I probably wanted to be, but it's definitely growing, and I would love to see more young women in that field. And I will say it may be a little bit of a challenge at first, but pushing through those challenges, it's so rewarding, and it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, and also with the huge surge in the popularity of women's basketball right now, I think it looks even better to have women covering that as well. So it's been a great couple of years with the surge of women's basketball all over the country. So um, if the sports journalistic community represents that as well, I think that's all for the better.
Yes, I'm a huge fan of this women's college basketball, WNBA. I've been keeping up. I'm on track. I'm on the train.
Well, here's my women's team, so that's who I
Yeah.
always rep. We're at the Lady Tigers, but got to go ahead and get some of these questions, and these are really good. So this first one is Precious Blackman. She's one of our basketball players here at Velma Jackson, and she asked, "Do you ever get stressed about a deadline when you have to have it in on time for the air?"
Oh, that is a great question. And you can ask my coworkers. Yes, sometimes I do get a little stressed. I think it just comes down to your planning. There are times where I'm out at a baseball game at like 7 o'clock, and I've got to be back by 8 to stack a 9 o'clock show and be on by 9:30. So there's a lot of it. I do get stressed, but when you're doing something constantly, it takes the ease off a little bit, and then also just reminding yourself like this is fun. This is your job. This is a fun job to do. So, yes, stress can be real.
That's awesome. This is Mariah LaFleur. She's a junior, and she asked, "Have you ever covered anything other than sports? And what are some things that you would like to cover other than sports?"
Um, if I ever covered anything outside of sports, surprisingly, I don't think while I've been here, I've covered a lot of things outside of sports. But if I ever did, I shout out to our meteorologist. I would love to do some weather. I mean, I think that is incredible, just their coverage and keeping up with all that stuff, and especially when we get into breaking, incredible. But I think weather is probably something I'd want to maybe dip my toe into if I wasn't doing sports.
Now, we actually did see one of your stories from college where you interviewed a girl there on the campus that was doing nails. We thought that was kind of interesting too.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yeah. When I was in college, I did do a little bit of more news than I did sports. But it was so much fun. I love college days doing my news stuff. So yeah.
I like this question. This is Herbert Carmichael. He's in ninth grade, and he asked, "If you could interview any historical or current celebrity, who would it be?"
Oh, that's an amazing question. Mm, historical. For me, this is gonna sound crazy, but probably Michael Jordan. Just to
That
sit
doesn't sound
down
crazy. That's
just to sit down and talk to this guy, I just, incredible. I know there's the whole like Michael Jordan, LeBron, so we won't get into it, but I just think to be able to sit down and really pick this guy's brain just about, his basketball career and the things that were going through his mind and how he got to where he is. Just incredible. That's up there on the list.
that would be awesome. I like this one. This is Cameron. This is Cameron Sutton. He's in ninth grade, and he asked, "When you started college, did you realize that this is the job you wanted to pursue?"
Surprisingly, I think it was a little before college, when I kind of realized I did an internship. Well, it was more of like a shadowing, kind of my senior year in high school. And I remember her name was Maria Martin. She's actually a sports reporter at 11 Alive. Go check her out. But she was working in Alabama at the time, and I got a chance to shadow her. And watching her do her job and watching her be so passionate, I was like, this is it. This is definitely what I want to do when I go to the next level and go to college. So I think I definitely encourage, oh my goodness, internships, shadows, definitely do them. But I think that's when I realized.
Yeah, and we also have a digital media academy here on campus at Velma Jackson. They also have one at Madison Central, and they have a digital media program at our career center as well over by Germantown. So there are opportunities to get experience with this in high school that really didn't exist in years past.
Yes, and that's incredible. Definitely having that experience going into the workforce, going into college definitely puts you a few steps ahead. And I think that's so important, having that kind of leg up.
I like this one. This is Colton Johnson. He's in ninth grade, and he asked, "What is the most useful skills someone can have to be a successful reporter?"
Oh, I would probably say someone actually told us me writing, having writing skills or just being able to communicate things really well, I think is very important. Um, I would say it kind of when you're out on camera and things like that, or even if you're behind the camera and writing for other people, I think having writing skills is very important just to be able to communicate the news or communicate the sports and really get your point across.
Absolutely. And I think that's what you said earlier about knowing what you're talking about. If somebody's
Mhm.
watching a story on the cross and they don't have any idea how it's played, you gotta explain it like you're talking to a 3-year-old. So and I was talking about that the other day. Some of these sports that aren't as big in Mississippi, I enjoy watching them. I don't really understand all of them, but they are a lot of fun to watch. So seeing something to help me learn about it, I think that's cool.
Yes, it's very important.
All right, this is Derek Mitchell. He's in ninth grade. And he asked, how long did it take you to become a sports reporter in your college program? And what's the hardest sport you've ever had to learn?
Um, Probably when I was in college, I did a lot is probably the majority of my time. It was my senior year when I finally started to kind of wiggle into sports. But I absolutely loved it. The hardest sport that I would say I had to learn, um, I don't probably maybe golf. Just because I'm usually when I'm watching golf, I'm just watching golf. I'm not keeping up with the pars, with the bogeys. I'm not keeping up with much of that. I'm just watching and being an avid watcher, but probably keeping up with golf and making like the point system and all that. That's probably the one of the toughest ones I've had to learn.
Yeah, and it's just, and you mentioned the Sanderson Farms. That's a huge tournament for the city of
Yes.
Jackson. It brings in a lot of economic development. It gives Jackson television coverage, and had some pretty big name golfers have come and played. I know Sergio Garcia's come and played, and Retief Houston. I mean, that's World Golf Hall of Fame members that are in Jackson. That doesn't happen every day.
I know being able to be a part of that is incredible. You see these big names from out of the country and they're here in Jackson and being able to talk to those guys and interview them, it's really it's insane, honestly.
Let's got one more, and this is Rihanna Kelly. She's in ninth grade, and she asked, "What's the most enjoyable part of your job?"
Uh, I would definitely have to say talking to my athletes, talking to my coaches and getting out there. They are I love it. Their personalities, they're all different. It's never a dull moment when I'm interviewing a player, when I'm interviewing a coach, or when I'm talking to people for stories. I love it. And I love that connection that I get to have and that kind of relationship that I get to build with the community. So that's probably my favorite part because now sometimes I go to the gym, like I'll see a coach at the gym. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, hey. So I love building those relationships and definitely being in the community. That's probably my favorite part.
Yeah, and it's just super cool. I think it's so good that the smaller schools, the Bellhavens, the Millsaps, the Mississippi colleges, the Hines and the Holmes, they get coverage. Just because they're not playing on ESPN, they still get coverage for all the hard work that they put in, and those coaches as well. And even the high school, I know you guys do a great job covering the high school as well. So that's got to be such a rewarding feeling to know. Look, these kids worked hard. Now we get to get them on TV for a little while.
Yes, I love that because I think, like I said before, like shining that spotlight, I don't being noticed and really having that stage to be put on because everybody puts in the hard work, whether D1, D2, D3, anything like that. I junior college, I being able to give them that spotlight and have their hard work shown. I love that. I think it's important.
Absolutely. Well, we're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for taking some time for us. But before we go, a couple of things. First of all, tell us when you're on so we can watch you on WLBT.
So I actually anchor on Sunday nights and Monday nights, and I do in the field reporting on Saturdays. So you can catch me then.
Well, before we go, and we talked about the opportunities to get experience in this field are here more than ever now. So why should these kids really consider, even if they wanted to be on the news side or be on the weather side, why should they really consider getting a career in broadcast journalism and news?
Yeah, I think being in broadcast journalism is so important for our community because we're the ones that get to tell the stories. You're the one that gets to, be the ones that put the your community's face on air, get to tell their stories, get to do the reporting, share what's going on. And people need that more than they actually know. So it's a very big part. And I think just being a part of kind of the big aspect is so important. I think it's just very beneficial and it's fun. I'll say that as
Yeah.
well. I have a great time. So
Yeah.
I definitely encourage jump into it. You won't regret it. Once you find your place and really what you're meant to do in the broadcasting field, you'll love it.
Absolutely. Well, again, we thank you for getting up early after being on the air last night. So we again, Kasie Thomas, WLBT Sports Reporter. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course, thank you so much for having me.
I talk to you soon, buddy.
Bye.